Hi, I'm Nicole Migueli, and today I have Sia Mistry with me.
Hi.
Do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Sia. I'm a storyboard artist working in animation for almost 3 years now. I'm coming up on my 3 year anniversary. That's kind of crazy. Most recently, I've worked on both seasons of Mira Royal Detective, and I believe season 2 is airing at the moment. And in my spare time, I like to make comics and post them on Instagram.
Yay, awesome!
Yay!
Here's the icebreaker question. Tell us your favorite quote, but in your own words.
Like any kind of quote,
Yeah,
like
any
an
kind of
inspirational
quote. Maybe something that sticks with you, something you've been thinking
quote.
about lately.
Trying to remember. It's like there's always like so many like I think of them at the most like inopportune moment, and then when I'm actually asked about them, they just like my mind just goes blank.
No, yeah, for sure. I was doing an interview recently and I haven't done one in like forever, and I just
Uh,
found all the good answers to the questions they were asking while I was sleeping, like at 3 a.m.
this isn't exactly a quote, but it's just something that I've been told by my therapist and also my ADHD coach, and it sounds very simple. Like they always try to remind me like you don't owe anyone anything. And the way my coach says it is that as long as you're respecting other people's boundaries, the way they interpret your actions is not on you. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
that's a really good quote. Yeah.
Yeah.
I need
It's
to.
kind of like the way she phrases it at least like reminds me of like an obligation or something that I would have on my community versus like taking other people's reactions to my work like very personally. So it's a delicate balance of both, but I've been trying to like figure out how to maintain that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What role has fear played in your mindset towards art?
Mm, I think every artist is fearful at some point or another, or there's always like that little nagging voice in the back of their head telling you like you're not good enough, or you're not going to amount to anything, or it's just a lot of self-doubt. I think most artists have, and I would say from like a formal education background, like a lot of art schools in particular, there's like a fear of failure, fear mainly because it's so like crazy expensive to be able to go to art school. There's that fear of failure, fear of being like in debt the rest of your life, pretty much. Um, there's fear of disappointing your faculty, your community, your parents, or whatever. And it's very hard to, in my opinion, like keep making art without succumbing to that fear. But it's also like a very delicate balance because I think of like the other side of that, like what would my life look like if I picked like another career?
Hmm.
Like if I went into, let's just use accounting as an example, even though I'm terrible at math. Like, let's say if I was an accountant, I would have this like constant nagging fear in the back of my head that I didn't go into art. And like I could have amounted to so much more if I had actually picked a passion and like went with it.
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
it's like fear just, you need a healthy amount of fear, in my opinion, to function, but you can't let it get to you too much.
How do you combat it? Like, how does that feeling affect the work that you do?
Mm, I think fear is a good motivator, but only to a certain extent. And how would I explain it?
Would you say mainly that you've been motivated by fear, like in the past, or has it been something maybe that drove you when you were younger that
Hmm.
still maybe not so much now?
I think at least when I was in school, I was terrified of like, like my family made such a huge investment to like put me through art school. and the fear of not being able to make something out of myself really motivated me. And by the time I graduated and I was working in the industry, that fear had mostly subsided. But when it went away, I realized I had pretty much nothing left to replace it with. Like, I lost a lot of my motivation for art because for the longest time, the only thing that was like keeping me going was the fear. And now I wouldn't say I'm like, I wouldn't say I'm fearful. It's more so I feel obligated to like make the most out of the skill and the time that I have. Like, it's a huge privilege to be able to go into any kind of creative field. Like, there's so many barriers to entry, and I'm lucky enough to be able to make a living off of it. And I want to make sure that I do it to the fullest of my ability, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. When you encounter a problem, usually what's the first thought that comes to your head?
Mm, as in like a problem while I'm working,
Yeah,
or
anything in general, or just in general.
um, I think right now, at least when I'm on the clock working, if I'm running into something, I normally just take like a quick break, like a 20-30 minute break, and I try to like come back to the same problem, like to see if I can approach it from a different angle. Because sometimes you just need to like rest your eyes for a little bit and like kind of reset your brain and like reapproach it. Like if I'm stuck on a scene or if I can't figure out like a specific shot, that's usually what helps the most. And if not, I just ask one of my bosses for help, basically.
What were you scared of at the start of your career, and has that changed?
Oh God. I think like everyone has imposter syndrome, at least like when you first start out in the industry, because it's like, oh my God, like what if they made a mistake hiring me? Like what if they
Yeah,
find
yeah.
out that I'm a fraud, you know? And I was like, I was terrified that I would get fired like every single day because I like messed up or something. And over time, I think that fear has subsided mainly because I think animation is just so it's contract based, right? So people like come and go constantly. And from what I've seen, like as long as you're able to like do your job well and be a good person to your coworkers, like you're doing great. Like you're gonna be just fine in the industry. And knowing that I don't have to be like the best at my job, but I just have to be like good enough and I have to be good to people, like that has helped the fear subside a lot.
That's really good advice.
Yeah.
There's this quote you mentioned to me, and I think it's kind of what you said at the beginning. Um, you said you're not responsible for the way other people internalize your actions, and I've had that like stuck in my head for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
And just, I love your comic about like how you got started in animation and your
Mm-hmm.
personal journey. Because something that I really admire about you, Sia, is your strength. You're really, really strong, and I just think that's very cool.
Oh,
I'm really
it means a
curious.
lot. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. What is the thing? Because, well, voice crack. um, when facing like a lot of rejection and stuff, it's a lot
Mm-hmm.
to take. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, what keeps you motivated, or what keeps you
Mm,
going?
I would say I'm just more stubborn than anything else. Like if I feel like people are being unfair or like that I'm being rejected on a, even if it's not a personal level, like if I feel that rejection, I'm just way too stubborn and I refuse to just like let that go and give up. It's it's partially just spite and stubbornness and just like the drive to make something of yourself, I think.
Were you
And
always like that, or was that something that you had to like develop?
I think it's something that I developed while I was in college because I think anyone who does animation or at least like does storyboarding knows that like your first five ideas or even your first 50 ideas are bullshit.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it's not like you cannot be precious with anything that you do.
Hmm.
And when you're like pitching to a group of people, you're like just blaring your soul out in front of them, right? You're just being like so personal. You're like putting your heart out on display. And like that feeling of rejection when they turn you down or when they don't like it, I think just like it just makes you like more resilient, I'd say. And just being able to like take that in stride, I remember is like the most important thing. Because if you really think about it, like there is no real job security in animation. Like your job could get outsourced somewhere else, like the next day, or the project could get shelved, or like anything like that. So you have to be resilient to a certain extent.
What would you
Mm.
tell like your younger self who is like yet to face all that rejection?
Mm-hmm.
Um, what do you think she needs to hear or to prepare herself?
Mm, honestly, I had so much self-doubt when I was younger, and to a certain extent, I still do. But I would just tell myself to like chill out and just have fun and like like taking stop taking everything so seriously and being competitive about it. Because at the end of the day, we're just making cartoons. Like it's a pretty good job. Like it's really not that serious if you think about it.
Yeah, that's really good advice. It's really
Yeah, we're
easy
not
to
out
like
here performing brain surgery. Like relax.
yeah, like nobody's gonna die just because this one cartoon like you didn't maybe
Yeah,
you didn't storyboard the sequence as impactful
yeah,
as it could be. Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
What's the lesson that's taken you the longest to learn?
Ooh. Um, it would definitely be um just the fact that everyone's on their own journey, and just because someone hits a certain number of milestones by a certain age doesn't mean that they're taking away from you or that you're somehow inferior because you don't meet those milestones. And especially when you look at social media, like there's so many artists that are so young and they manage to hit like a professional level like so quickly, and they're like not even out of high school, for example. And just being cognizant of the fact that everyone is on their own path and you can't compare one person's path to another is a lesson that I have to like remind myself of every single day, because I still do. I used to be very competitive, and I think part of it is just like growing up in an Asian household. Your parents are always comparing you to other kids, and just letting go of that and just recognizing that I'm on my own path has been very difficult. But it's the most important lesson I've had to learn.
Yeah, for sure. It's a really tough thing
Mhm.
to get a hang of.
Mhm.
When is the last time that you created without fear? And how did that affect your work?
Mm, I remember. It was definitely one of my comics, like the one that you mentioned that you really like, about just how many rejections I've faced over the past few years. And I remember when I was working on it, I just went through so many iterations of it and I just had like so many drafts. And I just remember at the end of the day being like, I'm just gonna make this comic for myself, and if it's like too intimate or too personal, like whatever, I'm not gonna post it. And I've never like been that open and that vulnerable online, or even like to my friends or my family. And it took a lot of people had to actually talk me into posting it because I thought it was just like too personal. Um, but that was definitely the last time I was like, I don't care what anyone thinks. I'm just gonna make this for myself, and like whatever happens, happens.
How did you feel after posting it? Or maybe, I don't know if you read the comments in your thing, because I know some people stay away from comments when they post like personal stuff like that. How did you feel afterwards? Did anyone, um, how did you feel about the responses to that? Or did they matter?
Mm, I was actually really worried about some events in the comic are like vague, but if you knew me when I was in school, then you would know exactly what they're about. And I was scared of like the backlash, even though I'm not mentioning any faculty by name, or like I'm not calling anyone out by any means. And I was really scared of that, but luckily I had nothing to worry about. Like all the comments were like so supportive. And it's just very nice knowing that I made someone feel seen and feel recognized when they look at my art. Because even if they don't have the same journey as me, like everyone knows that feeling of rejection. And like I'm very glad that I went through with it, even though it was terrifying at first.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Is there a project or something that you're putting off because of fear?
Oh my, so many. um, the ADHD doesn't help with that, and I remember I have this like bigger project that I'm really trying to tackle like little by little.
But is it like the graphic novel that you were talking about?
Um, yes and no. Like I've never right now I'm still trying to like find my stride in terms of comics and what type of stories I like to tell. And there are certain projects or certain ideas that I have in mind that only work as like the story only works in a longer format. And I remember I just intimidate myself with like just how much work there has to be done to be able to take a story to fruition. And I end up just making comics about like how bad my depression was that day or like how bad my ADHD was that day. Because they're like shorter, like they're personal, like they're very easy to execute. And I'm definitely scared of like not being able to do my best and like not being able to, I guess, like meet my potential.
Is
Or
that
I'm scared of like,
is
oh,
that the
sorry, go
fear
ahead.
that's stopping you? Or what's that feeling that's because you said you are working on it. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's more so like it's fear of like this is too much work and I'm never gonna finish it, or this isn't gonna amount to anything. Like there's nothing that could come out of this. And I don't know. Like I think all artists look for validation
Oh yeah.
at some level. And when you're doing like a personal project, like you're just doing it day by yourself, and you don't know how anyone's gonna react until like it's done. And I think that's scary. I think it's scary like not knowing what the future holds when the timeline for a project like that is just so long.
Yeah, for sure. I
Yeah.
definitely have some ideas like that too that are longer form and it's like, okay, how do I know that I'll get this done? Because it's a good idea, but like, do I have the patience for this?
But you do so much already though. Like that's still like just the fact that you're able to do like all these interviews and like you have so many projects and like sketchbook pages that you post online. Like finishing a project is like the hardest thing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And like just the fact that you have like a consistent output online is a big deal. And you
Thank
should be
you. I
proud of that.
appreciate that. I've
Yeah.
been doing Jorge Gutierrez, the guy who made Book of Life, and he's working on
Mhm.
another Netflix thing right now. The reason I started ramping up finishing things, even if they're terrible,
Mhm.
was because he said something about there are 10 bad films inside of you, kind of like how you were saying you just got to get it out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
currently, the Owl House thing that I just released, that's film 7 out of 10, which I'm very like, oh my gosh, I didn't think that I'd actually get that far. But yeah, it's crazy because I was just reading something that Owen Dennis said too. He was saying like not a lot of people finish things, so it's good to even
Mhm.
because the problem that I'm having with this longer story that I'm trying to write is that
Mhm.
it's so hard to write like a first draft of it because it's
Oh
the
yeah.
perfect thing in my head and it's this
Mhm.
long perfect thing that I can talk about. But then actually getting it on paper is like, oh, I might
Mm.
hate this. I might hate this. But the problem is, you can't figure out, okay, how can I fix this and make it better unless it's in front of you. You know what I mean?
Mm. I remember because I brought up this exact thing to my coach a while ago, and I'm trying to remember what she said. It was something like, "Don't edit in the sandbox. Like you're only supposed to play in the sandbox, like
Ooh.
the ones that little kids have."
Yeah, yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I'm talking about? Yeah. And she was just like, "When you're in the sandbox, you're just supposed to play. Like you're just supposed to like get everything out there and just like get all the creative like juices flowing. You're not supposed to edit. Editing comes afterwards."
Oh, yeah, that's
And she's like,
interesting.
Yeah, she's like, when you first start a project, like you're in the sandbox, you're playing, just play.
Yeah, something that helped me do that
Yeah.
was like I changed all the text to like white so I can't see what I'm writing
Oh,
as I'm
that's
writing it.
smart.
Yeah, so then it actually helps me like with the short film I'm working on. I went through like 7 drafts of it being terrible, and one time I just was writing and writing and writing, and then when I put it all back I was like, "Oh, wait. This is actually what I'm trying to say." And it came out well.
That's so smart. Oh my God.
Yeah,
I
there's
wish
a
I could
bunch
do
of
that with like art, but I can't. I have to see what I'm drawing.
I know, right?
That wouldn't work.
I hope this turns out well. Well, I technically is that like the blind contours and stuff? I guess that's
Yeah,
technically
like
it.
those figure drawings. When we had to do those in school, I would just cheat all the time. I'm like, this has to be good. I can't do
Yeah,
it blind.
I thought it was stupid. I thought it was like kind of a stupid idea at first, but now it's like my favorite thing to do because it does take effort, but it's like how you said it's like a sandbox. Like I don't know if it's gonna be
Yeah,
good, but it's just fun to look at things.
yeah. You just have to like let loose and like
Yeah.
just get the energy out, I think.
Something that you said in the No More Tokens podcast that you did, something
Mhm.
that I really, really loved, you talked about South Asian representation and diversity.
Mhm.
You said, this was such an epic quote. I think I told you, but you said, we have our foot in the door, but
Oh
we're
yeah, yeah,
aiming to
yeah.
get our voices in the room. And that totally summed up like the misconceptions that people in like Hollywood have about like just casting like Indian actors and things, but not
Mhm.
having like any Indian people like write it, so it's like weird.
Mhm.
And I was talking to the person who did City of Ghosts, Elizabeth Ito,
Mhm.
about that too, because she had the same thing. I'd love to hear you talk more about that because, as Indian people, I was like,
Mhm.
this is so cool. She said exactly like you summed it up in a way that I was thinking, but I've never like
Oh,
expressed
I
before.
see.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think it just really depends. Like I've been very fortunate to be able to work on shows that depict my culture. Like it's I used to dream about it when I was in school, and now that I'm like 3 years into it, I'm like, wait, what is my life right now? Um, but honestly, like the more I think about it, the more I'm like it's nice like seeing people like you and people who look like you, who talk like you on screen. But just as someone who like is in the industry, it's kind of just like, okay, like we're on screen, but behind the camera, like, is it easier for my friends of color to get certain jobs? Or is it easier for them to like pay their bills, or like is their life has their life meaningfully changed in any way if there is representation on screen?
Yeah, exactly.
And as a result of that, like it's not that I don't want or like that I don't care about representation on screen, but my efforts now are just more focused on just helping other people behind the camera, so to speak. Like that's where most of my energy goes right now.
That's really cool. In what ways are you trying to do that?
At the moment, like the thing that I enjoyed the most was doing a bunch of portfolio reviews through the union, and because it's so cost prohibitive, to say the least, to like move out to LA and like
Yeah,
have
yeah.
actual professionals look at your work, right? And like there's just so many barriers to it that I probably can't even like list all at once. And just being able to like look at someone's work, like someone who's like living halfway across the world, and like being able to like give them feedback so they can get a little bit closer to their goal, it was like it was just monumental to me. Like I love being able to like volunteer my time in that way, whether it's just like reviewing people's work or like teaching or just connecting someone to someone else.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Do you think like since like the pandemic and everything, I've been able to I moved back to Colorado, so I wasn't able to be in
Mm-hmm.
LA anymore, but there were so many like classes and opportunities that were just online. Do you think
Mm-hmm.
that maybe you won't have to like live in LA or be in like one of these big cities to work in animation anymore?
Um, I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword, mainly because the cost of living all over California is just so insane. So like the fact that people can work remotely and live elsewhere is just a huge advantage to them in their personal lives because you're not commuting, you don't have to worry about paying rent if you can like buy a house or you can live with your family like in a different state where it's like cheaper to live. Like on a personal level, like there's a lot of advantages for people to be able to work remotely, but then you're also considering, well, what happens to our work life balance and
That's
just
true.
the standards that we have to meet. Because if you're a production company, why would you hire someone in LA when you could just hire someone who's like halfway across the world and you can pay them like a tenth of what you pay someone in LA, right? So it's tricky and there's no one right answer to it, unfortunately. And yeah,
Yeah, it's really
only time
interesting.
will tell. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit scary, but I'm hoping for the best.
Yeah.
Um, what's something that you failed at and what happened afterwards? Like, you had all those feelings of like fear and everything,
Mm-hmm.
and the worst you thought actually ended up happening.
Mm. The biggest like I don't know if I would call it a failure, but more of a setback was when I was in school, I just didn't stand up for myself ever. I'd never advocated for myself. Mainly because the fear held me back. Like, oh, I'm not even that good, so what's the point in like, you know, trying to almost like toot my own horn and like try to like make all these connections and like try to talk to more recruiters. And I really just held myself back and I never advocated for myself or my ideas or what I wanted to be or who I wanted to be as an artist. And looking back, I really wish I had. I really wish that I had more backbone when I was younger and that I wasn't so impressionable. Um, but it's I guess it's good that it happened while I was in school and not out into like the real world yet.
Yeah. How did you
Um,
develop that backbone?
um, I think just being around a lot of other artists and like being exposed to like so many different types of art and just seeing like how different everyone's like creative voice is. It's just like there's room for everyone, like especially online. Like as long as you're being like genuine and like thoughtful with your art, like people are gonna relate to it no matter what. Like there's always gonna be room for you.
Yeah, yeah,
And
that's
like knowing
awesome.
that really helped. Yeah.
What what helped you get out of your comfort zone?
Classes. I guess like the fear of like failing a class. Uh, sorry. Um, yeah, I don't know. Like it's
Like
just like the
in hindsight is there any like choices that you made or like that um that you realize like significantly changed your life for the better?
mm, I definitely say I when I was in school I switched majors my senior year and because the school that I was at we had like a 3D curriculum so you learned like the entire 3D pipeline. And by the time I was a junior, I was like, I don't want to do 3D. Like, it doesn't mean anything to me. I don't enjoy it. I don't see myself doing it in the future. And I just ended up switching to like an independent study program. And I just did like storyboarding my entire senior year.
Oh wow.
And I got lucky timing wise. Like, that was the first, like, I was the part of the first graduating class in from that independent study program that year. And I'm very lucky that it all worked out in my favor, just in terms of timing and everything. So.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
really
I never could
cool.
have seen that coming.
Did you
Mm.
have anyone who like helped you or encouraged you and helped you to like overcome fear?
Mm, definitely everyone that I worked with during my internship in India and also everyone I worked with on season 1 of Mira because that was just like when I was a revisionist, it was just like being in school for another year, except that I got paid for it. Like I just learned so much, and I was given a lot of room to fail. Essentially, like I was given an assignment, and if I didn't do well on it, or if I had to like redo it from scratch, it wasn't the end of the world. I wasn't like holding up the pipeline or like holding up the schedule.
Oh, cool.
And a lot of people put their like faith in me. I guess like a lot of people gave me a chance when I was really just like a pretty average artist, and I'm very lucky in that sense.
Do you feel like you learned more like by going to art school and stuff, or like being at that job?
Mm, in terms of just the animation pipeline specifically, and how something goes from being like just a little nugget of an idea to like the final product, all of that I learned in school, but storyboarding specifically I learned on the job.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah,
really, really
yeah,
cool. Storyboarding is
yeah.
very hard to learn.
It really is. Yeah.
What's the most fearless thing you've ever done? This doesn't have to be art related.
Mm, I think honestly, probably just deciding to go to art school to begin with, because it's not cheap by any means, and it's not a safe career. Like it's not a career that you think of when you think of like long-term stability. And no one goes into it for the money, obviously. And I wouldn't say I was like fearless. It's more so just like I had a lot of people encouraging me to go into it. Um, so I think the fear of it like kicked in afterwards. But
Like,
just
oh
being
god,
able
what have
to
I
like,
done?
yeah, but like just being able to take that risk when you're like, I was like 16 when I applied to art schools. I had no idea what I was doing. Um, but like just being able to be like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do, and if it doesn't work out, then I'll just do something else. Like that was a huge. Like I'm very glad I stuck to my convictions.
Yeah, that's awesome. What would you say to someone who struggles with fear in their work?
Um, it just goes back to what I said earlier. Like, um, it's just art. It's not that serious
Yeah.
because it's just um, like what's the worst case scenario if you mess up your art? You know, like what's the worst that could happen? There's nothing really to it.
That's good
And
advice.
yeah, like there you really have nothing to lose unless you're like, I don't know. I guess unless art is like your full-time job and you have to like use it to pay bills and everything.
Yeah, then that might be a
Um,
little bit.
yeah. But even at the end of the day, like if you're not doing your job well, like they're just gonna hire someone else to like do it for you. Like you're not in charge of like people's lives or like their livelihoods.
What's
So
a
like you get
common?
to, oh sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. You can go.
Um, what was I saying? Like you just get to portray your own voice at your job, you know, like you get to like do your thing according to what skills you practice. Like that's still a huge advantage.
What is a common myth that students usually have about working or like being a storyboard artist in the animation industry?
Mm, I don't know. I'm trying to remember like the questions that I normally get from students are I think fairly realistic in terms of like, oh, how much do you make? Like is it sustainable? Like what's it like on a day-to-day basis? Um a big part of it I think that people don't mention enough, and I think I talked about this in the No More Tokens podcast too. It was just um, luck and timing play as much of a role as your skill. So the only thing you can really control is your skill level. Like if you make your portfolio like top tier, like the best it can be, then luck and timing are on your side. But if you could still be an amazing artist, and in terms of timing, like if no one's hiring or they just manage to like they just decide to like pick someone else, like that's out of your control, right? Like there's
Yeah.
a lot of like just luck that goes into it.
Yeah, for
A
sure.
lot of people like beat themselves up if they're not able to like make it, when in reality there's thousands of decisions that go into like the hiring process.
Yeah, for sure. When I first started acting, that was like one of the things, the hardest lessons that I had to learn.
Mhm.
Cause like I almost got close to like getting something, but I wasn't right because I didn't match like the family, the look of the family or something. Cause it all
Mm,
comes down to like height or like your physical features or like skin color and stuff like that. And that
mm.
was like pretty like, but I worked so hard.
Was
Yeah, it
it
was
for
sort of
like an Indian family, or are you allowed to talk
I'm not
about
sure.
it?
Well, yeah, because I'm Indian, but yeah.
But even with that, like at least like with my family, like we're all different skin tones.
Yeah, I know.
We're
That's
all
the
like
thing.
several
I
shades
mean,
apart.
Hollywood though, so it's
Yeah,
like a little. I can't say much, but
yeah.
yeah. What do you wish that you like were taught about working in the animation industry? What do you wish someone had said to you?
Oh my God. This pisses me off to this day, but I remember just overworking yourself being like glorified. It's like, oh, like at your first job, you have to like be the first to come in and like the last one to leave, and make sure you like put in your weekends, and you gotta show your boss that you're like doing everything that you can. And in reality, that's just a recipe for like burning yourself out and being
Hmm.
taken advantage of. Like if you're doing more than what your job requires you to do, that just means you're screwing yourself out of a promotion. Because why are you doing more work than what's asked for you?
Yeah, for sure. I was
Especially in a
listening.
union. Like,
Yeah,
if you and your coworkers all have the same job description, why are you trying to show off? Because now all your other coworkers are gonna feel pressure to like meet up to that standard.
yeah, for sure. I was listening to this interview that Mike Miranda did. He made the movie The Mitchells versus the Machines, and he was just
That was
talking
so
about.
good.
Oh my gosh, it's like literally like one of my favorite movies now. Oh my gosh, I could talk about it forever. But he was talking about how, on his own time, him, Dana Terrace, Matt Braley, they all just storyboarded stuff. They made like fake promotional movies. He like photoshopped the
Mm,
movie onto like the Times Square thing and all of this like extra stuff, and I was like, "Whoa, this is so cool!" But that was also one of my fears. Like, oh, is this like what show creators are like? Is this what we're supposed to do now when we pitch? Because
mm,
that's a lot of work, and it's really great that he did it because that definitely shows like the love and the passion you have for it. But at the
mm-hmm.
same time, if it becomes like one of those kind of expectations like, oh, if you
Yeah,
really love it, you do this too and we won't pay you for it. that's
yeah,
that's a little bit scary.
yeah. People forget animation is like a communal profession. It's not about being like the star of the room or like the best one in your team. It's about working with other people.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
I could get into like unions and collective bargaining, but that's still just like there's a person behind you and there's a person ahead of you. Like you gotta make their lives easier. Come on, just be a good person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow, we came to the last question.
Yay! That
What?
was fast. Wow. I
Yeah,
didn't even
I
notice.
know. What is something that you thought was scary but you were able to overcome or get through?
I think just like this is more like on a technical level, but just um a lot of action scenes, like boarding those. I've done so many chase scenes at this point that I've just lost track. And I think there's a lot of aspects of boarding and certain types of scenes that are out of my comfort zone. But I've noticed as long as you take like a very like as long as you do your best for an assignment, more often than not, you'll get good feedback on it. Like as long as people can tell that you really put in the effort and you really tried. And there's a lot of room for failure, even if it doesn't feel like there is. Mm.
I'm gonna ask you some questions about storyboarding because that's something that I'm
Yeah,
really interested in.
sure.
What is the biggest tip that you'd give to yourself, or what helped the most to learn storyboarding? Because it's a really like complicated thing to do.
Hmm. The biggest thing by far is just being able to draw fast and loose, but clear at the same time. And it's not, it sounds easy, but it's a lot harder to take a drawing and like boil it down to like just the bare minimum number of lines that you need to be able to tell the same story.
Yeah, for sure. What do you
And
feel since you? Oh, sorry for interrupting. I'll wait.
oh, I was just saying, I set a timer for myself when I'm boarding. Like if I'm on a really tight deadline, I'll just have like I'll give myself like 3 minutes for a shot and I'll just move on to the next one.
Oh, that's a good
Yeah,
strategy. Yeah. 'Cause
yeah,
then
it
I
helps. Yeah.
bet that gets like the perfectionist. I'm really like, I think everyone is like to a point like perfectionistic about their lines. Yeah.
You can't do that if you're a board artist. Like
Yeah.
absolutely not.
When critiquing like other students' like portfolios and stuff, like you were mentioning, what's something that everyone seems to struggle with, or what are some common
Mm,
problems that you see?
I think um I don't think enough people know just the importance of pencil mileage and at least with boards you can't be precious with anything. Like you have to be willing to like toss everything out and like redo it from scratch. And the only way you can do that without driving yourself insane is if you draw very fast and very loose. And a lot of people, the only way to get to that level is to draw a lot and like constantly, like over and over again. And like that's the only thing that helped me to loosen up, which is tight deadlines and also just like knowing that I have to get a certain amount of work done in like a very short amount of time. Like you have no choice but to just do a scribble and move on.
Yeah, yeah, that's one of the things that I personally struggle with a lot, especially because I'm doing all these films and stuff. It's hard, like how you were saying, you put like your whole heart into this or something, and then it's like, ah, I have to redo all of this, but from that angle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can't be precious about anything.
I think that is it. This was amazing. Oh
Yay!
my gosh, I love talking to you. I love
Oh,
like,
you too.
it's so much fun.
I love that you do this. Like you're doing like you're way more outgoing than
Aw,
I was at your age, and I really admire that. I'm like, wow, she just
oh,
talks to
thank you.
everyone.
I
You
appreciate
really
that.
get people to open up.
Thank you. I'm
Yeah.
like an introverted person, so it's really interesting to be like, yeah,
Really?
I think it's like, for example, like me and you, we have like a lot in common, so
Mm.
it's just easier
Yeah.
to talk to people when it's, I know that nobody's like analyzing every single thing that I do, so there's like nothing to worry about usually.
Yeah.
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 Um, do you have like any contact info, any places that people can find your work? Anything you want to like shout out?
Mm. I mean, Mira season 2 is airing at the moment. Season 1 is on Disney Plus,
Ooh, okay, I
so
gotta
you
watch
can.
all of it. Oh,
Mhm.
I forgot to say, I was the first time I saw Mira, my brother was auditioning for something at Disney, so we were just in the
Mhm.
waiting room, and I saw like out of the corner of my eye people in like saris, and I was like, oh, what is
Oh my
that? This is
god.
like 2 years ago or something, like at the beginning when they
Yeah.
first like announced the show, and I was like, Mom, that's us. They're like putting people that like look like us on
Oh.
screen. Because I've never like I grew up like watching like I didn't grow up obviously we didn't grow up like a lot of representation and it actually like
Yeah.
limits what you think you can be even like
Yeah.
subconsciously. So just seeing
Yeah.
that was like ah, so exciting, so happy. It just made me really happy because like the little kids that are growing up now, they can at least see that
Yeah.
one show and be like, hey, that's me, that's my family, I can
Yeah.
see myself there.
Yeah. I think a lot of professionals like get caught up in like the day to day of the job and we actually forget that like this is a product that's gonna go out into the world or people are gonna react to it like 2 years after you finish working on it. And so every time we hear of like good press that Mira gets, we're just like, oh, this is a real thing now. Like people are actually watching this. Oh, sorry, my dog's like right here. I don't know if the mic can pick him
Oh,
up.
that's all right. I can't hear anything. And if not, if
Alright.
it's dog sounds, dogs are always great. How do you feel like that feeling you were mentioning? Like has any like mom like texted you being like, "Oh my gosh, this show, I don't know, help my daughter do something?" Or like how do you feel looking at that impact? Cuz like uh I love preschool television. I was talking about this with
Mm,
like Elizabeth cuz that's like the first thing that kids see. Like for me, I have episodes of like Dora and Cinderella like burned into my memory
yeah.
for all time. How does it feel to do something like that?
I think it's like it's kind of just bizarre to think about because I don't have any family members that are like preschool age. But I remember. Oh, never mind. I can't talk about this without spoiling season
Oop.
two. So,
Okay, we'll put
but
spoiler.
I
Okay.
no, I'll just say I have a friend who was very touched by a certain episode, and she showed it to like a bunch of her friends, and I just got they were like talking about it on their Instagram stories, and she like sent everything to me, and like
Aw.
she sent me like their video reactions and everything, and it was very heartwarming. Just kind
Yeah.
of it's crazy to think about people
Yeah.
actually like watch it.
Yeah, I definitely
Yeah.
like I actually cried when I came home after
Oh.
watching that just because, like you live your whole life like feeling like you're not supposed to be there or like don't know what you're
Mm,
allowed to do. And like if I saw that
mm,
as a kid, oh my gosh, the I would have definitely trusted myself more. I've been like, yeah, I belong here. Take it.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
that's just it's really good. It's kind of historical even. That's like awesome.
I think it is. It's wild to think about. 'Cause
I
it's
know,
just been
right?
the last 3 years of my life now, so now I'm just like, oh yeah, whatever. And I'm like, wait, this is an actual thing.
Yeah, I know. 3 years. That's
Yeah,
insane. Yeah,
yeah.
you're amazing. I love talking to you. This is
Thank
so much
you,
fun.
thank
I'm
you.
glad we went on like a
Oh,
tangent. This is
I'm
awesome.
glad to. This is all I do. This is when my Adderall wears off. I'm
Mhm.
just like, wherever my mind wanders, like that's where we're
Yeah, I was listening to your interview. It's your No More Tokens one again because I was gonna be interviewed by someone else and I was like,
going.
you gave me advice about like pretend it's a job interview or something like that, and I was like,
Oh yeah, yeah,
how do you connect everything so well? My brain just like explodes, and then I think about stuff like later, and I was like, oh, I could have worded this so much
yeah.
differently. But yeah,
I mean that happens to me too, but I think um my coach always tries to remind me that there are like perks to ADHD, and like being able to make connections between seemingly different topics is one of them.
yeah, that's really
And
cool.
it's a huge advantage when you're an artist. So sometimes I just drop little nuggets of wisdom that I didn't even know I had.
Yeah,
And the
after
other times I'm just blanking out on basic words.
Yeah, for sure. After like the first interview that I did, like since COVID started, I like was doing lunges and like squats in my living room, and then my mom is like, "Wow!" And she like came into the room, she's like, "Wow, you did really good on that interview," and it's like you could have like breathe a little bit too, and I was like, "Oh," and then she's like, "Wait, what are you doing?" And I was like, "I could skydive right now. I have so much energy." It's so like exhilarating to be able to like talk to people and like
Yeah,
have people like understand what you're talking about. It's just so lovely. I'm gonna ask
yeah.
you one last time, or maybe we'll go on another tangent. Who knows? Do you have any contact information where people can
um,
find you?
my Instagram is Sia Mistry, but I spell it differently because I try to be cool. It's just SIA and then mystery like the English word MYSTERY, not like my actual last name. Um, but that's where I like to talk more about myself and like make art that's personal to me. So
Awesome. Do you have any
yeah.
last thoughts? Any things you want to share?
I don't think so. I mean, if there's a lot of artists watching this interview, I'd just be like, don't forget to take breaks and stretch because repetitive stress injuries are no joke. Like you do not want to put your body through that. Like your body is more important than anything. So
That's good
yeah,
advice.
it's always good to remind people of that. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. This
Yeah,
is so
thanks for
much fun.
having me.
Yeah.
Oh, I love
Bye,
talking to
camera.
you. I'm so
Oh, cool.
happy. Bye, camera.
Bye, camera. See you guys later.
Bye.